My name is Elliot, and this is my story about how I got caught cross-dressing by a girl wearing her clothes and makeup. I never imagined any such thing would happen to me, and it changed my life forever. When I was studying in high school, I used to work part-time as a painter. One time, Mrs. Ross, a nice lady in my neighborhood, hired me to paint the rooms in her house. She was a widow and lived with her daughter May, who was almost around my age. My task was to paint every room in Mrs. Ross's house, and I estimated it would take me about 4 to 5 days to finish. She was perfectly agreeable and asked me to start that coming weekend. I readily accepted. When the weekend arrived, I made my way to Mrs. Ross's home in the afternoon, equipped with my paintbrushes and various tools. She welcomed me warmly, accompanied by her 2 cats, but I soon learned that her daughter May was spending the day at a friend's house. After a brief tour of the rooms I was to paint, I suggested starting in the living room, and Mrs. Ross nodded in approval. On that day, I hadn't thought to bring my work clothes. I felt confident in my abilities and was eager to dive into the project. I began by carefully moving the furniture aside, creating a clear space to work. Once I had everything organized, I started priming the walls, preparing them for a fresh coat of paint. With the priming complete, I mixed my chosen colors and began applying them to the walls, immersing myself in the rhythm of the task at hand. Mrs. Ross checked in on me now and then, bringing snacks and drinks to keep my energy up. I'd take quick breaks, enjoying the refreshments before getting back to the job. At one point, as I was crouched down to paint the lower part of the wall, one of her cats curiously crept up beside me. I turned to give it a gentle pat, but before I knew it, the cat darted away and accidentally knocked over a chair, the very chair holding my paint bucket. In an instant, the bucket hit the floor, and paint splattered everywhere, drenching my clothes and even leaving a few colorful streaks on my face and hands. Mrs. Ross came rushing in, alarmed by the loud clatter. Her eyes widened when she saw the mess, with me in the middle, splattered in paint. I quickly explained what had happened, and she apologized, a little embarrassed, for her cat's helpful interference. I just laughed it off, assuring her it was no big deal. Realizing I needed to get the paint off my skin quickly before it dried, I asked Mrs. Ross if I could use her shower to clean up. She nodded and showed me to the bathroom. Once inside, I scrubbed my hands, arms, and face, using soap and a good bit of elbow grease to get every last bit of paint off. By the time I finished, I was definitely regretting not bringing a change of clothes, but I figured I could at least rinse the paint from what I had on. I washed my clothes as thoroughly as I could, wrung them out, and slipped them back on, damp but wearable. Stepping out of the bathroom, I was met by Mrs. Ross, who took one look at my soaking wet clothes and shook her head. She suggested getting me something dry to wear. I assured her it was no trouble, I could easily head home, change, and return to finish the job. But she waved off my suggestion, insisting that it would be quicker and easier for her to find something for me. I tried to politely decline, but Mrs. Ross wouldn't hear of it. She was determined that I stay and get comfortable. After a few minutes, Mrs. Ross returned with a small bundle of clothes in her hands. "I'm afraid I don't have any men's clothes here since my husband passed, but these are some of May's old clothes. They should fit you well enough," she explained kindly. "I'll put your clothes out to dry, and by evening, they should be good to wear again. In the meantime, you can change into these and get back to painting." I took the clothes and headed back to the bathroom to change, looking curiously at what she handed me. The top was a light green t-shirt, simple except for a small bow on the neckline, a detail that gave it a subtle femininity. Along with it were black pants that looked rather slim. I wondered if I'd even be able to fit my legs into them. I slipped off my wet clothes and pulled on the t-shirt first. It fit well enough, though it was a bit snug across the shoulders and chest. Then I picked up the pants, or at least what I thought were pants, and began pulling them on. As I worked them up my legs, the material stretched tightly around me, fitting closer than I'd expected. It was then I realized they weren't pants at all, but a pair of leggings. They clung to my legs and hips with a surprising firmness, having every contour. I couldn't help but notice how the snug fit created a slight outline in front, making it clear these were designed with a different shape in mind. Wearing May's clothes felt strange, especially knowing they'd been her old things. It dawned on me that I'd never worn women's clothing before, so this was unfamiliar territory. The fit, the feel, everything about it was new and oddly intriguing. As I looked in the mirror, my reflection caught me off guard. The snug fit of the leggings and the delicate lines of the t-shirt subtly altered my appearance, lending a softer, more feminine shake to my body. The clothes felt different against my skin, and I found myself wondering if this was the way girls felt in outfits like these. The sensation was unlike anything I'd experienced, a strange blend of curiosity and excitement. To my surprise, I felt a hint of arousal, and the outline in the leggings became more noticeable, adding to my self-consciousness. Lost in thought, I suddenly heard a knock on the door. Mrs. Ross's voice called out, asking if everything fit properly. Her timing startled me, and I quickly composed myself, replying that the clothes were fine. Still, I hesitated. Stepping out dressed in May's clothes, with Mrs. Ross waiting, felt oddly vulnerable. But knowing I didn't have another choice, I took a deep breath, gathered my wet clothes to hold strategically in front of me, and opened the door, doing my best to conceal the awkwardly revealing fit of the leggings. Mrs. Ross looked me over with a warm smile. "You look good. I'm glad I didn't throw those clothes out. Sometimes you never know when something might come in handy." I managed a nod, trying to hide the awkwardness I felt, particularly with the snug fit of the leggings. "I'll get back to painting," I said, hoping to move things along. She held out her hand for my wet clothes, and doing my best to keep my composure, I passed them to her, subtly using my other hand to keep the front of the leggings covered. Mrs. Ross took the clothes with a kind smile, not acknowledging my self-consciousness, and headed outside to dry them in the sun. Returning to the living room, I cleaned up the spilled paint and started mixing a fresh batch. Oddly enough, as I got back to work, I found myself far more aware of every movement. The leggings hugged my legs and hips in a way that was entirely new, creating a soft, tingling sensation that lingered as I stretched and bent. The fabric, snug against my skin, seemed to make me more attuned to my body, and I felt strangely lighter, even a bit exhilarated. It was a curious, almost magical effect that made the simple act of painting feel fresh and oddly thrilling. Lost in my thoughts and the unfamiliar sensation of the clothes, I didn't even notice the front door open. Suddenly, May stepped into the room. My heart skipped a beat. Of all people, she was the last person I expected to see, and now she was seeing me dressed in her old clothes. I froze, unsure of how to react, and quickly tried to busy myself with the paintbrush, turning away slightly to avoid facing her. But then I heard a soft laugh, and I knew she'd noticed. Her laughter was light-hearted, and somehow that only made my face burn hotter with embarrassment. "Are you wearing my clothes?" she asked, sounding amused. "I thought Mom got rid of them ages ago." Then, to my surprise, she added with a smile, "They actually look nice on you." I managed a small, awkward smile, unsure what to say. Yeah, your mom thought they'd be practical while mine are drying." I tried to laugh it off, but I was still too shy to meet her eyes directly. May just grinned, clearly enjoying the moment, which somehow made it a little easier to bear. I stood there, still too embarrassed to find the right words, but thankfully Mrs. Ross entered just then, explaining to May what had happened with the paint. May looked back at me with a playful smile, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "So, are you comfortable in those clothes?" she asked, trying to keep a straight face. "They're okay," I replied, doing my best to sound casual. She giggled at my awkwardness, then headed to her room, leaving me to get back to painting. By the time I finished the living room, it was late afternoon, and I was more than ready to wrap up. Mrs. Ross returned with my now dry clothes from the line, and I gratefully went to change. Yet, as I slipped back into my regular clothes, they felt so plain, almost dull in comparison. Something about the colors, the snugness, the softness of May's clothes had felt unexpectedly enjoyable, even fun. I'd never given it much thought before, but girls' clothes definitely had a flair that felt missing in my usual wardrobe. Walking home, I couldn't shake the thoughts circling in my mind. The way the clothes had felt, the way they'd looked, even the odd thrill of wearing them in front of others. It was all strangely captivating. That night, I kept replaying the experience, wondering what it would feel like to dress up like that again, to see how different I'd look if I went a step further. Before I knew it, the idea of dressing up as a girl kept tugging at the edges of my mind. The next day, when I headed back to Mrs. Ross's, I packed a few of my own extra clothes, just to be safe this time. As I arrived, May opened the door and greeted me with a mischievous smile. "So," she said, teasingly, "are you planning to change into my clothes again today?" My face instantly flushed red, and I struggled to keep my expression casual, managing only a nervous smile. I think I'm good with my own clothes this time," I replied, trying to laugh it off. May just chuckled, clearly enjoying my reaction, and waved me inside. The thought of yesterday lingered, though, as I stepped in, making me wonder just how much she'd noticed, and if she'd seen how unexpectedly much I'd enjoyed it. Once I'd moved all the furniture to the center of May's room and they'd gone, I took a step back to admire the cozy setup. Her room had a warm, personal feel, filled with all the little things that reflected her personality: photos, little trinkets, and of course, the closet that seemed to beckon. I started on the walls, rolling on the first coat of light blue paint, letting the rhythm of the work clear my mind. But after about an hour, I decided to take a quick break, sitting down and stretching my arms. The room felt unusually quiet, and in that silence, my eyes wandered back to the closet. The thought from yesterday, the feeling of wearing something different, came rushing back, stronger than ever. I tried to shake it off, but the curiosity was undeniable. After a hesitant moment, I walked over and touched the handle, feeling a small thrill as I slowly opened the door. The inside was filled with clothes in every color, texture, and style: dresses, skirts, tops, all neatly arranged. My heart raced, and I could feel that mix of nervousness and excitement building again, making it almost impossible to resist. As I opened the closet door wider, my eyes scanned over the neatly arranged sections, each one inviting in its own way. May's collection of clothes was organized with surprising precision. One area stacked with folded tops and jeans, another for undergarments, a row of dresses and formal clothes hanging, and in the lower section, rows of neatly rolled socks and hosiery. My heart pounded with excitement and hesitation. I told myself to resist, but the pull was too strong to ignore. My gaze fell upon a cute, fitted mini dress in a soft pastel shade. I took a deep breath, glancing at the door to make sure it was locked, and then drew the curtains tight. I undressed quickly, my hands moving almost on their own, and carefully slipped into the dress. The fabric hugged my body perfectly, cool and smooth against my skin, and as I zipped it up, a thrill coursed through me. Standing in front of the mirror, I was stunned by my reflection. The dress seemed to transform me. My body looked softer, more contoured, like someone I'd only vaguely recognized before. I couldn't stop examining the way the dress flattered my figure, accentuating a side of me I hadn't realized was there. The excitement mixed with a rush of heat as I took in the image, feeling both exhilarated and completely captivated by this hidden part of myself. After a few moments of admiring my reflection, I found myself drawn to the small makeup box on May's dresser. Curiosity getting the better of me, I opened it and sorted through the various items until I found a sparkly lip gloss. I applied a thin layer, and the effect was immediate. My lips gleamed, adding an unexpected touch of softness to my face. I felt oddly cute, something I'd never thought I'd describe myself as. Emboldened, I decided to take a step further. With my heart racing, I quietly left May's room and began walking around the house. Every step in that dress felt like a little burst of freedom, each movement reminding me how different, how strangely exciting this all felt. It was liberating in a way I hadn't anticipated, as though I'd stepped into a new part of myself. After a while, I realized I still had some time, and the thought of trying on one more outfit before they returned was too tempting to pass up. Back in May's room, I eagerly reopened the closet, my fingers skimming over a few different dresses as I imagined how each one might look. Just as I reached for a new one, I heard a sudden noise behind me. The door flew open, and there stood May. She let out a startled scream, her eyes wide with shock. My stomach dropped, and I froze, utterly petrified, the dress clinging to me like a spotlight in that moment. I hadn't heard her come in, and now there was no hiding it, she caught me in the act. I stood there, completely mortified. My mind raced, trying to come up with an explanation, but nothing could undo the fact that I had been caught red-handed. May's face was a mix of shock and anger as she demanded to know why I was wearing her clothes and rummaging through her closet. "I'm really sorry," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. "I was just curious." But I couldn't bring myself to look at her. I felt so ashamed, wishing I could disappear. Then, to my horror, she pulled out her phone and started snapping pictures of me. Panic surged through my body, and I could feel myself trembling. "Please, May, don't. Please stop taking pictures," I begged, my voice cracking with fear. The thought of anyone seeing these images made my stomach churn. Finally, she lowered the phone, her expression still furious. "Take off my dress and get out of my room," she ordered, her voice sharp. I didn't need to be told twice. My heart was pounding as I bent down to pick up my clothes from the floor, my hands shaking. That's when she noticed the lip gloss, and her anger flared even more. "You went through my makeup too," she yelled, her voice filled with disbelief. "Don't tell me you're wearing my bra and panties as well." My face turned crimson as I shook my head, desperate to get out of there. "No, I'm not," I managed to say before quickly grabbing my things and rushing to the bathroom. I slammed the door behind me and leaned against it, my chest heaving as I tried to catch my breath. The humiliation was overwhelming, and all I could think about was how stupid and careless I'd been. Now, I feared May would tell everyone, and I'd never live this down. I changed back into my own clothes, but the comfort they usually brought was absent now, replaced by an all-consuming dread. 100 questions swirled in my mind. Would May tell Mrs. Ross? How would she react, knowing I had not only gone through May's closet, but worn her dress and makeup too? My stomach twisted at the thought. When I finally stepped out of the bathroom, May was waiting. She held out her hand for the dress, and I passed it to her, my eyes glued to the floor, unable to meet her gaze. My shame was overwhelming, but I knew I couldn't leave without explaining myself. "Why?" she asked, her voice sharper than before. "Why did you feel the need to wear my clothes?" I took a deep breath, realizing I couldn't hide behind excuses anymore. It was time to be honest. "The other day, when I accidentally got paint on my clothes, I tried on some of your clothes because Mrs. Ross suggested it," I started, my voice barely a whisper. But after that, I just couldn't stop thinking about it. It felt exciting, I guess, wearing something different. And today, I just wanted to feel that again. I forced myself to look up, seeing a mix of curiosity and surprise in May's expression. I wasn't sure if she'd understand, but at least I'd told her the truth. I could feel my heart hammering as May spoke. When she said she'd have to tell her mom, panic flared in my chest, and I immediately began pleading, promising to do anything if she would just keep this secret between us. I didn't know what I'd do if Mrs. Ross found out. I'd be humiliated, maybe even worse. "Please, May, don't tell her. I know it was wrong, and I'll do anything you ask. Just, please don't say anything, and please delete the photos," I begged, my voice shaky. She sighed, her expression softening a little. "Sorry for screaming at you like that," she said. "It was just a shock, you know. But I forgive you." A small, almost amused smile crossed her face. "It's still so weird, though. You went through my closet, wore one of my favorite dresses. I mean, it's kind of funny now that I think about it, but wow, you really freaked me out there." Relief washed over me at her forgiving tone, and I managed a weak smile in return. I could feel the weight of embarrassment still pressing down on me, but at least she wasn't furious anymore. I took a deep breath and apologized once more, feeling an enormous sense of gratitude that May was willing to let this go. "Thank you," I said, my voice full of relief. "I really appreciate you understanding, and for deleting the photos." She nodded, giving me a reassuring look, and I felt the tension between us start to ease. When I asked if she wanted me to keep working, or if I should just leave, she paused for a moment, then said, "You can keep painting. Just Don't let anything like this happen again. Her tone was lighter now, almost teasing, but I knew she meant it. I nodded, quickly picking up my roller and getting back to work. As I painted the walls, my mind replayed the entire incident, feeling a mix of embarrassment and relief. I couldn't believe how close I'd come to losing her trust, and I was grateful for the chance to make things right. When I finally finished, May came in to check my progress, looking around the room with an approving nod. "You did a nice job," she said, giving me a slight smile. "Thanks," I replied, feeling a surge of relief. "I guess that's it for today then. And thanks again for everything." May waved it off. "It's all fine. Just try to keep out of my closet next time." She gave a playful smirk, and I managed a laugh, feeling like a weight had finally lifted as I left the room. As I gathered my things, ready to leave, May appeared with a small bag in hand. She held it out to me, a hint of a smile on her face. "Here," she said, "these are some of my old clothes. They're kinda dirty, but you can wash them and try them if you like." I stared at the bag, surprised and unsure of what to say. "Oh, that's not really necessary," I stammered, feeling my face flush with embarrassment. I didn't want her to think I was taking advantage or that this was something I expected. But she shook her head, still holding the bag out. "No, really. I figure if this is something you're interested in, you shouldn't have to sneak around. Just be yourself. Besides," she added with a light laugh, "it's better than you raiding my closet." Gratefully, I took the bag, feeling a mixture of relief and appreciation. "Thank you, May," I said quietly, truly touched by her kindness. As I walked home, May's words replayed in my mind. Her smile, her teasing, and the unexpected warmth in her voice left me feeling hopeful, and maybe even something more. The bag she handed me felt heavier in my hand, and my mind spun with thoughts about what lay inside. I didn't dare peek until I reached the privacy of my room. When I finally opened it, I found a collection of clothes, tops, skirts, and a soft sweater I recognized as one of her old favorites. A note lay tucked among them, scrawled in May's handwriting. "Be yourself, but please leave my closet alone. May." I couldn't help but smile, feeling the thrill of having someone who understood me, who, surprisingly, accepted this part of me without judgment. The next day, as I headed over to finish the painting, a sense of excitement mixed with nerves danced in my chest. May greeted me with a playful smile, and I realized this newfound connection was just beginning to unfold. As the day went on, we talked more openly, a comfortable ease settling between us. She asked about my interests, my dreams, even making light-hearted jokes that, to my surprise, only deepened my feelings for her. As I was packing up to leave, May hesitated by the door, her usual teasing smile softer this time. "Hey, maybe sometime you'd like to, I don't know, hang out outside of painting my room." She blushed slightly, glancing down before meeting my eyes. The warmth in her gaze hinted at a promise, an understanding that whatever this was, it was real, and that she wanted to be part of it. "I'd love that," I replied, my heart pounding. As I walked home that day, the bag of clothes in my hand felt like a gift, not just of acceptance, but of a new beginning.